Throughout the COVID crisis, we've been counting. Each day, the death toll creeps up.
I didn't know he had 24 hours to live.
But behind every number is a name.
I don't think anyone can forget in any way the amazing person he was.
And a loved one still in mourning.
I was moving in a nightmare situation with no control.
These are the stories of 3 frontline workers in East London. Their families, connected by COVID loss, are now seeking answers.
He always said it, he loved his job. It transported nurses and doctors and carers. Can I take a photograph of you?
Hannah Noor's father, Nadir, drove the 394 bus to Homerton Hospital in East London.
Thank you.
She's now retracing his route and taking photographs of his fellow bus drivers.
It's horrible. He'd have drove past this many more times if he was here.
It's been 6 months since Hannah's father died.
I used to go here a lot with my dad. He liked the open space. It's very comforting. It feels like he's here and he's watching over me.
Nadir Noor contracted COVID on March 15th. At this point, most of Europe had already gone into lockdown. In the UK, a debate was still ongoing on how best to respond here.
He got ill a week before lockdown.
How do you feel about that?
Angry, because if this lockdown was done sooner, then he would have been here today.
In July, an independent review by UCL University, commissioned by TfL, found an earlier lockdown would have saved London bus drivers' lives. Hannah's father's health deteriorated quickly and he ended up on a ventilator.
I woke up to a call and they're saying he's got about 50% chance of living, and I just couldn't register that.
Until May, drivers say that inadequate PPE was being provided. Photos began emerging on social media, raising questions about the state of their working conditions. On the 2nd of April, Hannah got the most devastating news of all.
It was my brother, and he said, like, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but Daddy died. He passed away, and he's gone. It felt like my whole world was just destroyed, and I just started screaming.
By this point, the UK had gone into lockdown, and the Prime Minister himself was suffering from the virus. And as the country clapped for NHS workers, one doctor inside Homerton Hospital issued an urgent plea about PPE to the Prime Minister. But for Dr. Abdul Chowdhury himself, it was too late. He'd already contracted COVID around the same time as Nadir Noor, the bus driver.
He knew he was ill, and let me tell you one thing about my dad. He would never, ever take a day off of work if he was ill, if he was feeling ill, unless there was a risk to other people.
Dr. Chowdhury had worked for the NHS for 20 years. Now he found himself a patient.
So my mum drove him to the hospital. That was the last time my mum actually had a proper conversation with him, because he went into A&E. And
did you get to see him before he went?
I didn't get to have a final conversation with him, no. The thing is, none of us thought that him leaving the house that day would be the last time he'd leave the house and wouldn't come back.
Dr. Chowdhury's condition was going up and down, but eventually he had to be admitted to intensive care. On 7th April, the Prime Minister ended up in ICU too.
Prime Minister has now been moved to intensive care.
The next day, Dr. Chowdhury's family got a phone call asking if they'd like to come and say goodbye.
So when I went to see my dad, I said a bunch of prayers, as many as possible, and then I apologised for every little or big thing I've done to ever upset him, and then I thanked him for just being the amazing father he was. And unfortunately, my dad passed away at 10:35, and that exact moment, everything flipped in the worst way possible.
In the weeks after he lost his father, Intisar confronted the health secretary on live radio.
Do you regret not taking my dad's concerns, my 11-year-old sister's dad's concerns, seriously enough, my dad that we've all lost?
Intisar, I'm really sorry about your dad's death. We took very seriously your father's concerns that he raised, and we are absolutely doing everything we can to get people the PPE they need.
There has not been a single adequate apology up to this day. It's all well and good and easy for the Prime Minister to stand outside his house and clap for the NHS, as he should, but so many things that could be done aren't being done.
Intisar is one of few who have been able to directly ask a question of decision makers. Many more families are still seeking answers, including Gladius Kulatungan, who lives just a few miles east.
I used to bike to school, and I used to watch this group of girls waiting for their school bus. And one day she threw a very wide smile at me, and I was completely hooked. So I went home that evening and told my mom. She said, when the roses come out, take one good rose and give it to her and see what her reaction is. So that's how it started.
Gladius and his wife had been childhood sweethearts in India. Dr. Luiza Rajakumari was an English teacher at Kingsford Community School in East London. She prided herself on changing the lives of teenagers. As the pandemic began, the couple were anxious.
Boris came on television and spoke about there is a possibility that you will lose your loved ones.
I must level with the British public. More families, many more families, are going to lose loved ones before their time.
A chill ran down my spine. And then one day she came back home with a fever.
Within 3 days, Luiza was struggling to breathe. They called 111 and after a 90-minute wait, finally got through to someone.
She is wheezing and talking to them, and oh, you're able to talk. That's what they told. And they're telling me, you give her paracetamol every 4 hours and that'll be all right.
That call on 111 was never escalated beyond the operator.
And looking back, I think if she had been admitted to the hospital on that very day, we would have her around. She wouldn't have died. And I also realized the people who were manning 111 had nothing to do with medical knowledge.
The next day, Luiza's condition was unbearable and Gladius phoned 999. She was admitted.
On the 17th morning at about 5 in the morning, I got a call. They said, things are not looking good, her vital signs are going down. If you want to come and be with her, this is the time for you to do that. And they kitted me up with PPE and I went and held her hand. That was it. I was with her for about 100 minutes and very slowly she passed away. And I felt a slight squeeze from her hand. And that was the last.
Since Luiza's death, Gladius has been meeting other families who share his experience.
I will blame Boris. His calculations were purely based on politics.
Gladius has come to Downing Street to see Ellis, who lost his grandfather to COVID.
I'm very sorry to hear about your wife. I have made this for you.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Ellis began standing outside number 10 in protest. Now families from around the country sent him their loved ones' names too.
I don't know how many more we are going to lose.